Hello everyone and welcome into Coach Craig Sports. This is the CFL DFS video for week number 6. If you're joining me for the very first time, first of all, welcome. Second of all, this is how this week's video will be structured. We'll be going over my CFL DFS sheet for week number 6. This sheet can also be found on my Patreon page. Very small monthly donation over there. You get access to my CFL DFS sheets throughout the month, as well as some MLB DFS notes if that's something you're into at the same time as well. And in the process of going through this sheet, we'll be talking about all the relevant players, whether or not I consider them a GPP option, a cash game option, a GPP paydown option, kind of like a dart throw. And then I will also be mentioning whether or not I'm overweight, underweight, slightly underweight, or in line with the field on these players just in general, to kind of give you guys my thoughts and opinions based on what the projected ownership is probably going to be. Obviously, it's harder to get projected ownership for CFL DFS, so take that with a grain of salt. Then I'll also be listing all the relevant injuries, some players that got promoted from the practice roster, some guys that signed this week. A lot of moving parts this week overall, so do definitely want to pay attention to that, although pretty much everybody that was promoted or signed this week is not listed on DraftKings at this point in time. But without further ado, we'll get right into it. We're going to start off with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. We got Zach Collaros at quarterback, $10,400 coming in off a really strong performance last week, and I consider him a GPP option. Probably going to be in line with the field on him. I do expect him to draw quite a bit of ownership this week just in general. At running back, we get Brady Oliveira back at $10,000 GPP option. He was able to practice in full all week due to that shoulder injury. Was technically listed as questionable, but he's on the depth chart listed as the starter. So safe to assume that he will be playing this week. I am kind of in line with the field on him. You know, if you really want to make a stance on him, you can definitely do that at the same time as well. And then we're going to move down to wide receivers. Nick Dominski, GPP option, probably slightly overweight to the field on him. He's been doing really well so far this season. Limited practice on Sunday. He was able to practice in full on Monday and Tuesday due to that ankle injury. He's listed as available. He'll be good to go. Dylan Mitchell on that one-game injured list once again. He's just kind of been that healthy scratch at that wide receiver position for them so far this season. And then we got Dalton Schoen at $6,700 GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field on him once again. He's been a solid, steady producer so far this season. And then last but not least, we have Carrick Wheatfall. Once again, $8,800 GPP option, probably going to be slightly overweight to the field on him, although his price tag is getting up there at this point in time. Then we move down to the Blue Bombers defense, $4,200 GPP option, probably in line with the field on them overall. Going against Calgary Stampeders, not like the greatest matchup in the world, not a bad matchup, just kind of a matchup there, probably no major stances to be had just in general. Then we're moved down to that Calgary Stampeders team. We got Vernon Adams Jr. at $9,900. He is a GPP option for me once again. Probably going to be in line with the field on him. You know, if you really want to take a stance, you can definitely do that at the same time as well. Moving down to Dedrick Mills at running back, $9,300. GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field on him once again, although his price tag is quite a bit up there at this point in time, so maybe even slightly underweight just this week in general. And behind him, Jayshon Entry is out due to an ankle injury. So Luvic Chocket, probably mispronouncing his name, was promoted from the practice squad. Eno Benjamin will operate as the backup running back, so not too much to be said there. Mainly just Dedrick Mills and nobody else at that running back position just in general. And then kind of an interesting wide receiver room. We got Clark Barnes, $7,500. I think he's a GPP option. I'm probably not going to get to too much of him myself just in general, but slightly underweight to the field on him. Reggie Bigleton's still going to be out. He's on that 6-game injury list. And then Tevin Jones, $6,200. GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field on him. Same thing with Jalen Philpott at $6,400. And then Dominic Rams at $6,100 GPP option, maybe slightly overweight to the field on him this week overall. If you want to make a major stance on one of these wide receivers, probably a good week to do it overall, but nobody's truly standing out from this group of 4 at this point in time. And then we move down to Calgary Stampeders defense, $3,900 GPP option. I do like their defense overall, but will be slightly underweight to the field on them this week, just in general, going against that Winnipeg Blue Bombers team that does have a really strong offense. Then we move down to the Tiger Cats. We got Bo Levi Mitchell at quarterback, $9,600. GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field on him. Once again, maybe ever so slightly overweight to the field. Greg Bell at running back, $8,500. I have GPP if he plays. Slightly underweight to the field on him, just coming off that calf injury, but he was able to practice in full all week due to that calf injury and is technically listed as available. So if he's out there, probably not playing any of the other running backs, but probably going to get underweight to the field on him just in general. Then we move down to the wide receiver room. We got Shamar Bridges, $6,900. GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field on him. He hasn't really done too much so far this season. If you want to get a little bit overweight, hopefully it's the game that he breaks out. There is always the chance for that. But he's a guy that I'm probably mixing and matching into some lineups, you know, if I'm going out and playing multiple lineups just in general. Then we have Kenny Lawler, $9,400. Cash game option, probably going to be in line with the field on him once again. Brendan O'Leary Orange was able to practice in full all week due to his rib injury, and he's listed as available. Technically was listed as available last week, but was on that one-game injured list once again. We'll see whether or not he's active for this game. Kendra Smith hasn't done too much this year, $5,600. A GPP option, probably going to be slightly underweight to the field on him. I don't expect the field to begin too much. Potentially a good leverage play overall, but so far this season has mainly been Kenny Lawler and Tim White. Tim White at $8,600. GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field on him once again as well. And then we have Drew Wolcherdzycki, who was technically listed as available last week due to that ankle injury that was bugging him. Was able to practice in full on Monday and Tuesday, but was limited on Wednesday. And he is technically listed as questionable for this game, so I would assume that he is going to be out once again. And then we move down to the Tiger Cats defense, $4,000 GPP option. Probably going to be slightly overweight to the field on them. I do like the matchup quite a bit going against the Toronto Argonauts. And the Tiger Cats defense, they've shown the ability to get turnovers at times so far this season. Then we move down to the Argonauts team. Chad Kelly's going to be out once again due to that leg injury. Nick Arbuckle, $9,800, so his price tag did go down ever so slightly, but GPP option probably going to be underweight to the field on him. Probably not getting to him once again, but, he's a little bit cheaper than he is. A lot of the other quarterbacks' price tags have risen, so he's at least viable, and he's shown a little bit of upside, but not really getting there myself personally. And then in terms of the running back room, we have two running backs out now at this point in time. Deontay McMahon out due to an ankle injury, and then Maya Williams is also out this week due to a head injury. So Kevin Brown at $3,000 could be like a paydown option, could be a cash game option if you want to go there at $3,000. In line with the field on him ultimately. They did sign Khalil Laybourne this week as well. He was signed to the practice roster. I believe they have Jaron Mitchell still on that practice roster, who did look pretty good in the preseason. So I would assume that there's at least one other running back active in addition to Kevin Brown on game day. And then we move down to the wide receiver room. We got DeMonte Coxie, $9,100. He is a GPP option in line with the field on him once again. DeVaris Daniels at $6,000. GPP option probably going to be in line with the field on him as well. And then Kevin Meidel, who's performed very well so far this season, $5,200. He's another GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field on him at the same time as well. Jake Herslow is unfortunately not on DraftKings for whatever reason. Doesn't really matter because he wasn't a guy that we're going to play, but I just wanted to mention that as a note. And then for that Argonauts defense, $4,100 GPP option. Do have them listed as potentially slightly overweight this week. If you want to be more in line with the field, definitely does make some sense. But I do like the upside that they could have, especially if they're able to get some pressure on Bo Levi Mitchell, which is something the Argonauts defense typically does pretty well. And then we move down to the BC Lions. Nathan Rourke at quarterback, still limited in practice on Tuesday and Wednesday due to that core injury. We'll see whether or not he's good to go this week or not. Jeremiah Masoli, who has been starting in his place as of late, limited practice on Tuesday and Wednesday due to a shoulder injury, so he could potentially be out in this game. So we might be looking at Chase Bryce at quarterback this week. We'll have to see what that depth chart looks like. They did also sign Garrett Schrader to the practice squad just to have another body out there, and he may potentially get promoted, if only the two quarterbacks ahead of him are listed as out, but kind of that emergency quarterback for this week just in general. And then we moved in James Butler, $9,000. He's kind of a GPP option, a cash game option if you really want to go there. Slightly overweight to him this week. He's coming off a really strong performance last week. If it's a less than ideal quarterback situation, whether it's Chase Bryce, banged up Jeremiah Masoli, or banged up Nathan Rourke, he could get some additional touches from that perspective. Moving down to wide receiver, Stanley Berryhill was able to practice in full on Tuesday and Wednesday due to a thigh injury, so would expect that he's back this week overall, but still not really getting to him. Javon Catoy, if you want to take that shot at $6,600. GPP option, probably in line with the field on him once again. Keon Hatcher at $8,700. Looking more like that Keon Hatcher of old. GPP option, probably going to be slightly overweight to the field on him. He did have an ankle injury pop up, was limited on Tuesday, but was able to practice in full on Wednesday, so not concerned about that whatsoever. And then we have Justin McInnis down here at $9,600. Has not been the greatest season for him so far. GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field on him once again. Kieran Passant was able to practice in full on Tuesday and Wednesday due to his thigh injury, so he's likely to be back this week. And then Seven McGee, who was their kick returner 2 games ago, did not practice on Tuesday and Wednesday due to his own thigh injury, so probably not going to see him once again this week. And then if we move down to BC Lions defense, they are $3,800. Potential paydown option, but will be slightly underweight to the field on them. There is some upside to be had there against the Montreal Alouettes, but it is a little bit of risk at that. Mainly the upside just depends on how McLeod Bethel-Thompson plays at quarterback, assuming that he does ultimately end up getting the start once again. Then we move down to the Alouettes team. McLeod Bethel-Thompson at quarterback, $9,100. I have him listed as a GPP option. Probably going to be in line with the field on him overall. assuming that he does get the start once again this week. Davis Alexander, the starter, was limited in practice on Tuesday and Wednesday due to that hamstring injury. It was thought initially to be a multi-week injury, so probably not getting him this week once again. And then Stevie Scott at running back was moved over to the practice roster, so we will only have Sean Thomas Erlington and Travis Tice active for game day this week. Travis Tice is going to be my preferred back. Both are kind of GPP options if you really want to go there, but Tice is getting a little bit kick return duties in addition to some work out of the backfield. Then we move down to the wide receiver position. I'm going to mention a couple notes here to start off. So Daniel Aladejo was moved over to the practice roster, and Jalen Wayne was promoted from the practice roster. They also did sign Alexander Hollins to that practice squad roster. And then Austin Mack, dealing with that hamstring injury, has not been able to practice so far this week, so probably going to be out once again. And then we got Tyson Philpott, $9,200. GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field on him. All four of these wide receivers that I do have listed here are going to be GPP options, probably going to be in line with the field on all four of them. So Charleston Rambo's $5,500, Tyler Snead's $7,200, and then Cole Speaker had a really good week last week, is at $5,800. Speaker was limited in practice on Tuesday, but was able to practice in full on Wednesday due to a quad injury, so no real concerns there for him just in general. And then we move down to the Alouettes defense. They're $4,300, a really good defense overall. I have them listed as a potential cash game option and slightly overweight to the field on them as they go against the BC Lions with either banged up Jeremiah Masoli at quarterback, banged up Nathan Rorick, or Chase Bryce getting in the start. So should be a pretty attractive matchup for them just in general. Then we move down to the Elks. We got Trey Ford at quarterback, $9,700. GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field on him once again. Unfortunately, last week we didn't see a lot of rushing yards out of him. If he can do that this week overall, should be a pretty good week for him. In terms of the running back position, we got Javon Leake now at $5,600, so he's really moved up in price tag. GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field on him. You know, he does offer some decent upside as a punt returner, as well as his role on the offense. Justin Rankin, GPP option, probably going to be underweight to the field on him. Probably not getting to him overall this week, but if you really want to go out there and do it, you could definitely do it at the same time as well. Then we move down to wide receiver position. Steven Dunbar Jr., $5,300. Potential cash game option, slightly overweight to the field on him this week overall. Outside of week one, he's been doing really well. Really safe floor type of player. If he gets the touchdown, could definitely help him out at the same time as well. Curly Gibbs Jr. has bounced back nicely after a rough week one. $5,900 GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field on him. And then we have Kyan Julian Grant coming off the really strong performance last week. $5,700. His price tag definitely did move up quite a bit. GPP option if you want to go there. In line with the field, maybe ever so slightly underweight to the field on him just in general, coming off that strong performance last week. And then Arkell Smith at $4,700. GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field on him. He is a very interesting piece since he is returning some kicks as well as his role on the offensive end. And then I'll mention that Benjamin Scott was moved to the practice roster and Curious Jackson was promoted from the practice roster. So just kind of flipping those two guys around. Jackson's not available on DraftKings this week overall, but don't really expect him to play a major role in his first game of the season. And then we move down to Elks defense. They're $3,700. GPP paydown option, probably going to be in line with the field on them. There is some upside to be had there against the Redblacks. However, that Elks defense has been very disappointing so far this season. Then we move down to the Redblacks. Drew Brown at quarterback, limited on Wednesday due to that hip injury. Once again, we'll see whether or not he's back this week. Dustin Crum, if he ultimately ends up starting once again, GPP option, mainly based on his rushing upside, but probably going to be in line with the field on him once again. You know, both running backs are viable. William Stanback's $5,700. Daniel Adebayo is $6,000. I would consider both GPP options probably going to be in line with the field on both them, although there are running backs that I am prioritizing ahead of them just in general this week. And then we moved down to the wide receiver room. So we got some news that Braylon Addison did not practice on Wednesday due to a shoulder injury. Would still consider him a GPP option if he ultimately ends up playing this week. Probably going to be in line with the field on him. You know, if his ownership gets knocked down because of that injury, maybe we end up slightly overweight to him just in general. And then in terms of Justin Hardy, Eugene Lewis, and Khalil Pimbleton, all three I would consider GPP options in line with the field on all three of them. Hardy comes in at $8,000, Lewis comes in at $7,900, and then Pimbleton is at $4,900. You know, if you want to make a stance on Pimbleton at that reduced price tag, you can definitely do that at the same time as well. And then the last note that I have for this Redblacks team is that Andre Miller was promoted from the practice roster, so that might be an indicator that they think Braylon Addison is going to miss this week, but we'll just have to see as the week plays out. We'll get another day of injury reports prior to lock, so that should help us out a little bit there, in addition to his final status, which will be coming out on Friday, just in general. And then in terms of that Redblacks defense, $4,400. GPP options, slightly underweights the field on them this week. I don't like the price tag. They're still pretty banged up on defense, but there is a little bit upside to be had going against the Elks just in general. And then last but not least, we have the Rough Riders as the lone team on the bye this week. But with that being said, that's a quick little rundown on my CFL DFS sheet for week number 6. As always, if you have any other additional questions, be sure to drop them down in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. And then I'll be listing all the depth charts as they do come out throughout the week down in the comment section of this video, as well as any other major news. Anything beyond that will be updated on this sheet, which will be up on my Patreon page. Once again, very small monthly donation over there for that. You get access to my CFL DFS sheets throughout the month, as well as some MLB DFS notes if that's something you're into at the same time as well. But with that being said, if you're brand new to my channel, checking out for the very first time, or have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now we have MLB DFS in terms of the core pick videos, typically Monday through Friday. I know it's been a little bit more hit or miss this week and last week. Probably going to be for next week at the same time as well. So just bear with me for that. And then I do have my CFL DFS video, this video coming out once a week, typically on Wednesdays. So definitely feel free to check that out if that's something you're interested in as well, which I'm guessing it is because you're already watching this video. So feel free to check in for future weeks at the same time as well. And then last but not least, if you're interested in sports betting, if you're interested in prop betting, be sure to check out the links and promo codes down in the description below for BetUS and PrizePicks. If you are a brand new user to either one of those sites, when you sign up, make your initial deposit, you will get a first match deposit bonus. For PrizePicks, it's a 100% match up to $100, and then for BetUS, it's a 125% match up to $2,000. So some pretty great opportunities to be had out there. If you have any other additional questions related to that whatsoever, feel free to reach out to me, whether it's down in the comment section of this video or on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport, and be more than happy to help you with that journey as well. But with that being said, that's all that I truly have for this week's video. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in CFL DFS for week number 6.